Hi, everybody. Welcome to Valiant's live stream as we do it every Thursday. I'm Megan Quick. Hi, George. How are you today?
Good morning, Megan.
Hi, Matt. How are you?
Hey, good morning. I'm here in the office today. It's kind of a nice change of pace.
Me too.
Yes, you look great too.
I look great. The little office. Look at the fancy photos and gear
Yeah.
behind me.
And Matt, you're also just decked out in Valiant colors. And
I'm on
that's-
brand. I'm on
Right?
brand today. I
He's
can't
on
help
brand.
it.
You have to do. It's actually a rule when we go in the office, orange
Yes.
and blue the whole time. And then Charles Dean is here, and he works at Industry City. He used to work with us at Valiant, and we're so excited to have you, Charles. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hey, Charles.
I
Yeah,
see the spotlight on Matt is pretty nice.
Yeah.
I've always done that. I have spotlight as well.
I
But
know.
There's
you,
always a
you look
spotlight.
great. No, I should have said you look amazing. So everyone, just before we dive in, I wanted to say thank you to our regular viewers for watching us. And if you're new here, Valiant, we are a managed service provider. We have a national reach, but we're based in New York City.
Mhm.
And if you want to learn more about us, please watch previous episodes on our YouTube channel. And please join the conversation by commenting on our YouTube channel. We really enjoy that. And because we just like interacting with our viewers, I think it gives us ideas for new topics.
We don't want to talk to ourselves all day. We do that all day
No.
anyway, right?
No, we are
Yeah.
literally putting out a live stream to be like, come talk to us, please. We want to talk to you. And you can actually, Matt, you told me this today, you can watch our live stream via Twitter now, which is very exciting.
Awesome.
At the
Yeah,
Valiant
yeah.
Way.
That's a new feature for the system that we use for streaming, and I haven't even actually looked at it myself yet. So as we're talking today, I'm going to just peek into our Twitter account and see what it looks like.
That's awesome.
Cool.
All right, yeah. So that's our introduction. And this episode, we are focusing on specialized environments. We kind of got fascinated by this, I think, even during our discussion last week. And we were like, you know what, let's make a whole stream about this. So we'll just dive right in. A lot of our clients have different specialized environments. We have to get creative. They're complex. And you just have to think about IT a little differently when you are in these environments. So, George, do you want to take us away?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, some of the just over the years, myself and I know Charles and Matt, we all kind of worked in unusual places to work. Some of the folks that we support now and in the past was like these industrial yards or like warehouses, like these
Right.
facilities where it's like, we always think, using computers, think of a one breath, like earlier streams, we were talking about really great clean server rooms and data centers and
The
humidity
ideal. Yeah.
controls and all this stuff. And then the furthest thing from that is like an outdoor
Trolley tracks.
Yeah, exactly. A trolley track.
Yeah.
Or we work one of the clients we work with is a lumberyard, and there's like it's dirty, not dirty like it's like filthy, but there's this dust. It's outdoors.
Debris. There's debris everywhere. There's bits and
trucks
pieces
coming in
of
and out.
stuff.
There's
Yeah.
sawdust. There's just a lot of movement, and these are really complex, but they rely just as much, if not more, on their technology to deliver to their customers day
Yeah.
in, day out. Because they're processing orders, they're doing pick and pull. Years ago, Justin, who's not here today, our CIO, we worked on a large fashion company's warehouse out in Secaucus, and it was like there's no heat, but the wireless still has to work, and there's RF,
Yes.
there's
Mhm,
RF,
mhm.
and you have to make sure every part of that facility gets connectivity because it's a lot different than and just another thing, little printers. Ideally, we have all these little
Right.
printers that you have
Right.
to kind of maintain and service that are kind of out in the wild. And I know that printers are always a source of service
Frustration.
issues. I mean,
Mhm.
Charles, how many over the years, how many times have you gone doing service tickets and printers for weird spots? I mean,
Oh
I
yeah,
know some.
they used to be. So printers are the biggest enemies of IT people. No matter what,
Right.
like there is no way there's going to be a proper solution for printers.
Right.
Water printers.
Yeah,
Water
it's
printers.
like
Right.
they because it's very difficult to have a code for printing the physical like integration of the software to a printer. It's like rocket science, I will say. There's always updates, and you know
Yeah.
what's the worst part about it is now everything is getting more digitalized, more
Right.
so now they have printers that have white color. So it's like, oh yeah, you can have black paper and it will print out white color also. You're like, come on.
Who needs that? Right. And it becomes, I mean, if you step back for a second, you're taking this, it's basically this electromechanical thing and converting digital into an analog format. It's like almost like our last analog kind of interface.
Yes.
And
Right,
if you think about the complexity of converting bits and bytes into, a sheet of paper.
Bits and bytes onto a sheet of paper, color profiles, different color ranges. I mean, there's so many bits and
Then you
pieces of
have the
printing that we don't
QR
even think
code.
about.
Yeah.
And
You have
end users' reliance on it is just like so important.
And
Like,
to bring it
can
back,
we just take
Oh,
one
sorry.
second to just quickly send a message to all manufacturers of printers that PC load leather is probably one of the worst phrases I've ever heard anyone mutter ever.
low letter. I know.
It's offensive. It's
Yes. What the hell does it mean? But just
Yeah,
to bring it back to like our so imagine you have this kind of delicate electromechanical device sitting in an environment that has truck traffic, sawdust, no humidity
Vibration.
control, vibration, and it's required for day in, day out operations that are legitimately revenue producing.
Yes.
And customer service facing. So it's a tough environment, and we see it, as I said, we see it all the time, and I think it's getting more complex as you get more automation in warehouses. We see some stuff, people trying to replace kind of people doing that warehouse work with robots.
Like
AWS, that's going to be the best
Exactly.
example. So if you're going to go in the warehouse, you're going to see like automated machines doing all those, the tags for each customer. Everything is automated, and they have redundancy placed in there. So one machine has like 20 printers, micro printers inside it. So if one breaks, it just jumps.
It
to
just
the second
falls
one.
over into like these different pools. But someone really, but the problem is so vast that it's not something you can solve with spending more money on the individual thing. The only way to get the redundancy is add more and more of the thing, right? You set the and when it fails, you kind of like mark down.
Well, it's lateral scaling.
Modular. So what they do is one fails, it's going to alert. You just come in and take out that module, and then the other one is so it's going back and forth.
Exactly. It's almost like how in some ways it's very similar.
It's like shark's teeth.
Yes, shark's teeth. So it's really complex, and we see it when we work on to support those folks. It has its definitely challenges. So
yeah, and I think this is fun. I love this topic because also like I was telling you guys I used to work in theater shops, which not exactly lumberyard, a lot of lumber, a lot of sawdust, all that.
Sawdust. Yeah.
A lot of like, why isn't this printer working? And then I actually worked in a bakery when I first moved to New York, and our next topic is, or our next sort of extreme environment that we want to talk about is bakeries or more like food servicey environments and their IT support. Yeah. George,
so once again, we have a number of customers in the hospitality, food production, food manufacturing spaces, and man, there's a lot of flour.
Not only flour,
flour, sugar. There's tons of stuff, and I mean, just now, I know we were talking about bakeries, but even I had my confection company years ago, and I'm starting to have flashbacks about sugar getting into all the gears of the machinery and everything else.
Yeah.
No, and not only that, it's also going to be the grease, because when you're cooking all the stuff or baking stuff, like the grease is in the air. So then you get grease on all over your keyboards. They're like, why is
it not working? And once again, not to go back to the printer, but so folks of us who worked in restaurants, depending on the restaurant you worked in, a kitchen printer is like the lifeblood of the kitchen. It's like that, like mission to Mars, from the front of the house to the back of the house. That's how they get their job done. And all of a sudden, it's like boom, boom. And we've all. I think most of us have worked in. Many of us have worked in hospitality, and you'll see the kitchen. There's just a line of the cooking, the slips, and they're just going. And if there's any hiccup in that, you get what's called in the weeds.
Oh, I got a question for you guys then. Did the recent print spooler vulnerability in Windows have a major impact on food service?
Depends on what.
I would assume they're probably using like the thermal printers in most places, right?
Depends on the point of sale system, and depends on how to print it. It really, more and more now, a lot of the point of sale / hospitality management systems are more like web apps, so they're a lot vulnerable to that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But flip side is now all of a sudden you need to have infrastructure that is really resilient so that all those equipment can always get to the web app, so it can actually send the print job to the kid. So you start thinking about what's happening is, your front of house folks is out there placing orders, slips are getting printed, but if the internet's not working, they can't really order, right? They're kind of offline because that tablet is not talking to a server in the house, but it's talking to a web server or web app, like a SaaS application. So now that, once again, that's where you really need that truly redundant networking, where it's like, layers upon layers upon layers of internet connectivity, all the way down to maybe like a 4G backup, that sort of thing. Really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And then even again, like you guys were saying, the flour, grain silos, all those things that are just so hard to the necessary environment of a bakery. And I don't know if this is a point, but end users who are not necessarily special, like they're specialized in baking and they're specialized in running a restaurant, and then having technology that seamlessly supports them, even if it's not just like office workers at least interface with a computer all the time. Whereas
Correct.
these environments, computers support it, but the users, their skill is something else. Their skill is
they're specialized for something completely different. They're there for
Right.
the manufacturing of a product, not necessarily the operation of, and I just love saying it, a grain silo.
Yeah,
Correct.
I know. But I wanted to bring that. I was like, that's a whole what? Yeah, this is. I love this. And then the next environment we're talking about, which we also have experience supporting, farms.
Yep.
Can we talk a little bit about that? Yeah.
Well, interestingly enough, like farming, you think of farming as for a quote unquote low tech industry, but the
Right.
reality is it's a really high tech industry, right? There's a lot of automation. There's a lot of just connectivity
You
required.
have automation, you've got planning, you've got systems that help figure out proper irrigation patterns and how much water needs to be used, because you're minimizing the waste of your resources that ultimately go into your final product. And the more you can control that, the more profitable you can be. It's a business.
And honestly, we've been talking. We've spoke to different folks over the years. Some of these, this idea of these kind of urban hydroponic farming environments, that's really connected.
The high density vertical indoor farming is a big deal, and it's becoming so much easier to do. I mean, the strides that have been made with like deep water culture technologies and lighting over the past decade has been amazing. I mean, look, we used to grow tomatoes and what did we have? Tomatoes and
some herbs,
Boston lettuce, and we did
lettuce,
Thai basil in the office years ago. It's the same idea, just at scale.
Wow.
I think we used a lot more electricity than we got out of it, but
it wasn't three. We used like 3 months of power to make a caprese salad.
Right, exactly. I think our cost per yield was quite high, but the idea was
that's a good example though of like how much support these things need, and like you were saying, George, we think of it as low tech, but it's all supported by like.
And especially like if you're trying to wrangle out the highest efficiency per dollar for your and of course there's all farming industries, from like especially this kind of emerging cannabis industry, that's a huge one out west, and it's coming here to New York. And I just think it's going to be, and it's interesting, it's a really fascinating topic.
Look, all that's going to be yield per square foot. And the way that you maximize that yield per square foot is through properly leveraging your technology. That's what it comes down to. It's not going to be hunches. It's not going to be years or generations of experience farming, which is not to say that that's not important. But the technology is definitely inching its way in pretty seriously.
And technology is changing as well. So, the power consumption that you were talking about, there are ways now to not reduce, but
you can recycle.
Channel it.
Exactly.
So it moved. Instead. It's some energy storage density. I was talking to a client the other day, a potential client the other day, and they were talking about having the idea that if you have all these electric vehicles parked in a parking lot, that's vast quantities of electricity, power stored in a place that could we leverage that for like during peak demand, like, hey, we need more energy, where is it, and we could replace it in the evening. It was a really interesting concept of like of like almost like hooking using all this dense power, this kind of dense power. It was even
time sharing of power sources.
Power sources, right? And if you think about like gasoline in a car is not really it's like it's single use. It's only meant for a car, right? You can only use it that one way. So it's kind of an interesting concept. And I was like, wow, that's a really once again, it's always, it never ceases to amaze me when people think of things that, like, I was like, I would never have even thought of that, and
Yeah.
it blows my mind. It's so exciting.
I mean,
So
this is sort of a more philosophical question, but kind of you bring that up, George. These specialized environments also, they do invite a lot of innovation, right?
right,
Like they do invite a lot of this, like, how do we make these things work? And then we can apply it to maybe simpler IT environments.
Yeah,
But
I think that the innovation also it very much follows our philosophy. I mean, when you
right.
build something, it needs to be stable to make sense to continue with.
right.
You want to make sure it's secure, or in this case, maybe more reliable than
Mhm.
secure. I don't think the term is one to one. And then after that, it has to be able to scale. And that's a big part of the technology. That's where the value comes in. That's where you're able to make the difference. Once you're able to scale past a certain point.
Well,
I,
I think.
I, I
No, sorry.
believe there's I believe there's these layers. So the first is the innovation. It will when an innovation happens, it's mostly consumption. Like everything is high. Then they talk about, okay, how can we sustain it? That's
Yeah.
when you break down, and then you
Right.
talk about how we can mass produce it. It was the same thing like with the I will say
Yeah.
the biggest example is our vaccination
Right.
Yeah.
was made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How is it going to be? There's issues with it. We're going to
Right.
go through the process. Then we're going to see how it can be mass produced.
Right.
Mhm.
I see an interesting
That's a
part.
good
I think.
example. Yeah.
I think another interesting, just to kind of bring it, is the speed in which we can do that now compared to the past, because
Yeah.
there's so much more. But the technology, it lends itself to be doing it faster. Because the modeling is faster, the ability to
Yes.
like more scale
Mhm.
quickly. Because if you think about, like, how in the past, let's say the automobile, it's an example. I think
Well, it's perfect because
Yeah.
I was going to say Henry Ford didn't have a production line on day one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
correct.
Yeah.
But it took almost 100 years to get the reliability out of a gas of internal
Mhm.
combustion engine.
Mhm.
And now, but taking those lessons with, they say, electric vehicles, now the biggest problem with electric vehicles is not reliability. The biggest problem is energy density. And
Yeah.
as Charles said, and this is kind of the
Mhm,
Charles example, it's
mhm.
like the first ones are going to be really expensive, really heavy, not really
Yeah.
work great, but then
So
it's going to keep going down in price.
so Elon Musk was talking about, we're going to mostly go for solar. We're going to have vans that will have expandable roof, so
Right.
then that you can get more. But the issue comes again to the batteries itself. How are we going to
Correct.
store it?
It's a
Mhm.
That's
chemical
Well,
makeover of the
yeah,
battery.
there's a certain level of volatility to these things, and
Yeah.
when they release energy in an unexpected way, it can be nasty. There's also the
Mhm.
matter of solar cells, although solar cells are starting to get much more efficient over the past 3 or 4 years,
Mhm.
Right.
to the point where they're attractive even for where I live, where we don't get a lot of sun. It's starting to make
Correct.
sense to look about.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, it's technology, and I think that everything is a bit intertwined. You have innovation in
Yeah.
one area that sparks the thought for innovation in another, and they feed off each other. It's like
Right.
it's almost like the kind of like Red Queen scenario, but in a good way.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You
no,
know.
it's true, true.
So I want to bring this. I love when we philosophize, but I do want to bring this back down to just to specialized environments. The last one I want to talk about, because we've done a lot of work in this area as well, industrial complexes, right?
Mhm.
These a lot of these old warehouses that we've helped convert into like workable sort of modern spaces. And again, George, I'll have you start off
Yeah,
on
I
what
mean,
you consider the
just, instead of like tearing them down, kind of reimagining utilization for these spaces, for
yeah
different spaces throughout, especially here in the Northeast and, kind of the Midwest. There's, just huge amounts of untapped, unused space that could be used for, you name it, it could be used for it. I mean,
Mhm.
even if you think about 20, 30 years ago, far west side of Lower Manhattan was, like Hudson
Totally
Street
different.
was right. It was meant for like printing presses. That's what it was
Mhm.
built for. It's like really heavy duty industrial floors,
Mhm.
anti vibration, that sort of thing. And then it became like hip and happening, low cost space. And then it became just nice space to have offices. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
that's the progression of it, is like taking those spaces. Now there's always unique challenges in those spaces because they're they were built for a very different purpose. And the one that comes to my mind always is that, and this is something we see in some older facilities that we work in, is that, running cabling is really complex because
Mhm,
there's
mhm.
no raceway, or there's no space that was designed for running like fiber optic cable. So you have to really kind of reimagine the construction of it in a
Mhm.
way. And another one is getting wireless access throughout the space. The buildings are so densely built. It was so much like what's called rebar, which is like steel bar, glass, heavy duty concrete. Things don't radio signals or even cell signal doesn't punch to the building. We've worked in a couple of spaces where it's like it just becomes like, hey, I can't make a phone call. That was,
Yeah.
you know, I mean,
You know,
So
just-
this is where our environment is getting affected with,
Right.
and the best thing from cellular people like Verizon is the only one who is offering this DAS system.
correct.
So that's the best option, because concrete, if you have pure concrete, there's no way you're going
Right.
to get 100% signal, not even call it 10% signal.
It just gets
Concrete
attenuated.
is going to block out
It
everything.
just falls off.
No,
It just, like
because
literally, you'll sit there with the RF and to
Yeah.
see it just
if you're
literally
going to
shuts off.
see, these buildings were made, not the purpose was for World War II. So,
Right.
so they were made
Yeah.
to literally withstand a war.
they're
were like-
tanks. They're
Yeah.
tanks at the end of the
So-
day.
So that's why there wasn't even oversight back then of telecommunication is going to expand this much. There was not even an idea there is
It's
such
so
thing as
reactionary.
internet.
Hey, you know what? We can get this telegraph signal through. We're good. Go on
Yeah.
to the
Well,
next
it's-
story.
yeah.
But it's a big
Right.
part of it.
Well, it was like, you know, we have a 2-inch conduit that we can run a bundle of copper cable through. That's the height of technology. We don't need anything else.
Mhm.
And you know, the thought of imagining like an interconnected a complex building management system to monitor every square inch of the space for heat, humidity, fire, lighting, impact of sun on the space, which people don't you don't really think about. But if it's a sunny day, it can raise the temperature of a building by like
Yeah.
X percentage of degrees
Depending
every
on
hour.
and that's another topic to go into one day, is like building technology, coatings and windows and all the other types of components that are technologically influenced these days.
Right. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, all these things need connectivity. They need to be managed and monitored, and they need
Yep.
to be secured because they're a massive vector of attack. They are
Yes.
from an attack surface perspective. They're out there. They're connected, and they can be exploited. Unfortunately, depending
Yeah.
on how they're configured. So,
Absolutely. Well, I think that kind of leads us into honestly a bit of our wrap up, and
Yeah.
I want to say, you know, um, the biggest bullet point that sticks out to me, kind of going off of what you said, George, like none of what we talked about, none of adjusting for these specialized environments and creating solutions for them can happen without a plan. You know, we've all seen the like put duct tape on this, put the wires over here in New York City. We've seen very poor planning in New York
Well,
City.
yeah.
like I
Yeah.
will kind of agree and disagree. The
Oh,
thing
yeah.
is when you go in environment, you don't know what it is there. So first you
Right.
need to figure out what it is.
Yeah.
And then you put the duct tape for temporary so you can figure out and plan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Innovation comes in there. So then you are planning, and like if there is an
Right.
innovation, then you implement that, and then you take out the duct tape, like rebuild the whole infrastructure, or you can do half and half hybrid. It depends on what the
It's
infrastructure
such an-
will
Charles,
need.
thank you.
It's such an idealistic take, though.
No,
Well,
but I
that's
think
what
he's right.
I implemented, and it works. So it
Yeah.
depends on where you are. The
Yeah.
main idea, like a lot of people say, oh yeah, we're going to rebuild. Okay, but what's the cost?
Right.
You
Exactly.
rebuild something, you're literally not only the cost of spending on the infrastructure, but also the cost on decreasing your innovation, like not innovation, your income.
Yeah.
Anything that is affecting your direct income of your assets being not properly managed, so it will affect you in a longer scale than just upgrading something. So at the end of the day, that's what it is.
And Charles, I want to thank you for making that distinction as well, because it's sort of it's sort of a clear-eyed view. It's like we come up to this place, use the duct tape. Don't stop with that though, because we have these environments, especially in places like New York, and especially in these specialized environments that aren't really going to change. We need to learn to support it. So
Correct.
you have your temporary measures, but you got to move on from those because those will fall
Yeah,
apart.
because you have to
100%.
understand, like that 30-year-old thing is never going to last. The same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, the biggest example I can give you is Mac.
Mhm.
Mac
Right.
is still running on an old kernel. Half of it is godfathered in.
Right.
Mark is like close to 40-year-old. It's
Right.
like ridiculous. That's where the vulnerabilities are coming in.
Right.
BSD is secured, so that's taken care of, and slowly and gradually they're making it more BSD. But hey, you still have that kernel, and guess what? What's the newest hack that happened?
I feel like, Charles, I feel like you brought that up and you mentioned BSD to get me really excited, and I appreciate that.
But you can understand. I'm a BSD guy also, so Linux and BSD guy. So at the end of the day, it's all about like you are strategically setting up. So that's why when Mac introduced with the ARM infrastructure, they're literally now moving on to BSD and getting rid of all of that stuff.
It's
this is how you.
It's right. It's iterative. Once again, much how we kind of approach most problems. Iterative improvement, slowly but surely making it better every time, and always having the eye for that kind of like almost idealistic goal of making it perfect. Even though perfection is the enemy of progress on one level, so you always got to be like iteratively improving it. So I think that's really important.
You always have to be striving for it. Absolutely.
Correct. You kind of know what you want. So anyway, this is great. Thank you.
Yeah, guys, thank you so much. So we're going to wrap this up, but again, this is a really fascinating topic and we could talk about it endlessly. Charles, thank you so much for joining us. And next stream, we are kicking off our cybersecurity block next week. Very relevant. And if you're not thinking about cybersecurity, you probably should.
You might.
Yeah, it'll be fun. We're not going to do anything terribly structured. We're really just going to be talking about what's happened over the course of 2021 so far, just to kind of help us dive into it before we get into any kind of like truly helpful advice. I want to just cover all the insanity that we've been through over the past 273 days. I think we're on day 273. We're in week 40 of 2021. Well, I know that much.
The best way to think of it, it's up 400%. From 2020 or 2019, so it's not stopping. So it's something to think about.
Yeah,
that's because everybody went remote.
Yes, exactly. No, the space,
that's it.
The attack space is getting
the attack surface. The attack surface is just
well-defined perimeters no longer exist.
Yeah,
that's what it comes down to,
and it never will exist again.
I will wait for next year's DEF CON. That will be fun.
And just a few more housekeeping things. If you enjoyed today's stream, please hit the thumbs up button. Please like and subscribe. Again, if you have any questions or ideas for topics for us, just put it in the comments or reach out to us. Again, we love interacting with you guys and tailoring some of our content to answer your questions. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. And please visit us at thevaliantway.com to learn just more about us, what we do, the scope of our services, and get in touch with us. And then any last words, guys? This is a great stream, as always.
Great stream, and I really appreciate Charles jumping on for a morning. We love the special guests. It always makes it just that much more fun to do these, and it's a little different perspective. And I always like your approach to it, Charles. Thank you very much.
It's always nice to see Charles's face and talk with him for a little while. And with that said, however, we are in New York City, and I want to go get a bacon, egg, and cheese. So I do want us to close up the stream pretty soon.
Yeah, right. New Yorkers time, but we gotta go. All right, thank you guys.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Have a good one, folks.